This government didn't.
And just before I call the next speaker, I have tried to remind members that we are discussing the appropriations, and whilst it's very interesting to give examples of policies from either side, they must be related to the appropriations. That's the debate we're having. Okay, I call Tim Macindoe.
Madam Chair, I must admit I'm very partial to a fine drop of Sauvignon Blanc from the Honourable Dr Nick Smith's Nelson Marlborough area, and I've been spending the last few minutes trying to work out how can I work into the appropriations debate a bet that Dr Smith will take with me that he's bound to lose, where I will cash in on one of those drops. But anyway, Madam Chair, I will move on. For members, for those who are listening outside the House, they may not be aware of the fact that this isn't just a debate about housing. It is the social development and housing theme that is looked at by the social services and community sector. So I think, having had a good run now on housing, it's probably appropriate if we turn our attention to aspects of the social development portfolio. Unfortunately, I didn't hear the appropriations review for that particular committee because I'm no longer on it. I was in my early years as an MP, and I have to say it's an area that is particularly dear to my heart. And I want to focus on the fact that the current government, and the Minister is in the chair at the moment, has signalled major changes to our welfare system, particularly in the area of obligations and sanctions. And so I would like just to focus on where we've been, where we're going, and highlight just how important that is. Now, Madam Chair, I think something we could all agree on is that the hallmark of a civilised society is how well we look after the most vulnerable members of it. Because there's no question, Madam Chair, that the welfare system, which is surely relevant in this appropriations debate, the welfare system, of which you are a very fine former member. I do beg your pardon, Madam Chair. I'm desperately trying to show you that I'm bringing it into the debate. As I say, the welfare system needs to be able to cater for a very large group of people who, in many instances, through no fault of their own, have fallen on hard times. They may have suffered a significant setback, or there may have been a major downturn in industry in their area, or for whatever reason, they need the welfare system. And yet, the quid pro quo of that must be, for it to be as generous and compassionate as we all want it to be for those who desperately need it, that nobody is abusing the system. And so when we hear the current minister, as she did on The Nation on Saturday, in an interview in which she said very little and went all around the traps.
Look, it's really interesting, but will the member come to the appropriations and talk about the previous 6 months, but not policy that's going on into the future?
Well, Madam Chair, I'm sorry. The reason I'm mentioning this, okay, we'll go back, is that in the previous 6 months, we have seen the success of the previous government's policies. We have seen that unemployment has come down substantially. We have seen that we have a record number of New Zealanders now in employment. And most importantly, we have seen the success of the social investment policy that was followed and was still in operation up until the change of government, initiated by the former Finance Minister and latterly Prime Minister, the Right Honourable Bill English, for which I believe he will be very warmly remembered in New Zealand's history. Because, Madam Chair, throughout the last decade, New Zealanders have seen some of the toughest times imaginable. And Mr English's driving philosophy was to say, we will be there for those who need that support, but we need everybody who's running a program to show us how it works. We need them to be accountable for every dollar of taxpayer funding that they are spending, because after all, social development is one of the big budget areas for any government, and we need to be able to see that it is making a real difference. It's not about bean counting, it's about showing what a difference can be made in people's lives to get them out of dependency and into the best form of social security that is possible, and that is paid employment. The ability to become self-reliant, for people to be able to look after themselves and their dependents through meaningful work that is paid rather than for long-term dependency to be the norm. And, Madam Chair, for far too long we have seen the trap of intergenerational welfare dependency, seeing too many New Zealanders cast aside. And I really worry that with the change of policy that is being signalled from the approach that had been taken, that we're going to go back down that track. And so it is worth noting just how significant the previous policies have been. I commend the previous government for that, and I urge the new minister not to set it aside.
Madam Chair.
I call the Honourable Carmel Sepuloni.
Madam Chair, I thought this was the time to respond, given that the Honourable Tin Macindoe had brought it back to